Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to be helping you guys figure out if you're therian or maybe even your theriotypes. Now, quick little side note, this video should not be the only reason you believe you're therian. It does take a lot of research finding out your ultra-human identity. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start the video.
Be eaten by a coyote, run little under the pack may follow. Two quite thin, their brother fatter. Against the wind, just gotta be faster. Run for the yard, they fought up the gutter. That was a route, better find another. Was that a rabbit?
Now, this is probably the most important thing that I'm going to say throughout this video, is that therianthropy is not at all a choice. It is like involuntary experiences, okay? It is not a choice. Therians may also face shifts. So shifts, you don't have to have shifts to be a valid therian, but shifts are a common occurrence. Some therians might face phantom shifts, where you feel as if you have a body part that's not really there. I get tail shifts a lot, so I feel as if I have the dog tail or a Wolverine tail. And sometimes I get Wolverine ear shifts that come about right there. And there's like lots of different types of shifts. It's not just phantom shifts. There's mental shifts or mind shifts where you act more as your theriotype than you normally would. You like act more off of animal instinct than you would off of human mind. But when during a mind shift, you don't lose full control over yourself. That's actually, when you do lose full control over yourself, that's actually a medically recognized, I wouldn't really say disease, but like disorder. It's like a medical recognized disorder called lycanthropy, where it's you believe that you can physically change into the animal, which you cannot do, and most therians do not have lycanthropy. Lycanthropy, I cannot pronounce the word for the life of me. I'm very sorry, but some do, and that's still okay, and that is still valid. Another important thing to mention is cameo shifts, and cameo shifts are usually shifts that are like, it's like a flicker. They don't happen often, and they don't relate to your theriotype. These happen pretty much, I'd say at least once within somebody's therianthropy. I remember one time I had a cameo shift of a cattail. I was looking out the window and I saw a cat and I was like, huh, cool. And then I had a cameo shift, and yeah. So cameo shifts, they shouldn't really define your theriotype because they're not of your theriotype. It's just kind of something that happens sometimes. If they happen really often and you find that you experience like cat-like behaviors, say for the cattail, then I do more research before finding out if that actually is a theriotype and not a cameo shift. So if you only have shifts and you like don't experience animalistic behaviors, then I wouldn't really call yourself a therian, because what makes a therian is animalistic traits, qualities, and behaviors, and these happen involuntarily. They can also be urges. Like for me, I have like the urge to like climb trees a lot and to play in snow, but like on all fours and jump around and slide around, and that's something that Wolverines do a lot. I also have the urge to bark and to howl, like my dog theriotype. Some of my inhuman behaviors is I would like walk a little circle on my bed before I went to sleep. I know. I'd also sleep curled up in a ball, more like how animals do, except that can be common human behaviors too. It's important when you're researching to know the difference between human behaviors and animalistic behaviors. Another few things that I do is whenever I play with my dogs, I'll like wag my tail. I will shake I'll like shake my behind to simulate wagging a tail. I don't normally realize that I do this. Also, whenever I'm wet, like here's what I got out of like a pool or a lake or like the shower. I'll like shake it instead of drying it off because that's just what comes naturally to me. And a few other things as well, but this video is not about me, it's about finding your identity. Therians act like they're an animal without even realizing it, at least at first. They identify either partly or wholly on a non-physical level as an animal or animals if you're a polytherian. A polytherian is a person who has multiple theriotypes. Notice that the definition of a therian does not include quadrobics or wearing gear, like my mask. So quadrobics and wearing gear is something that anybody can do. A non-therian could do it, I could do it, a 4-year-old could do it, anybody could really do it. But for therians, it helps them connect to their theriotypes. Like, I like wearing clip-on tails to help me feel more connect because I get phantom tails a lot. And I do quadrobics because I feel like it helps me stay fit, and it's just a generally fun thing for me to do, and it also helps me connect. But anybody can do quadrobics, okay? Wanting to do quadrobics or wanting to wear gear doesn't make you a therian. It's the inhuman traits, behaviors, qualities, and urges that do make you a therian. Make sure you know the difference between wanting to wear certain things and do different exercises, wearing gear and doing quadrobics, between involuntary animalistic traits and behaviors. Because a lot of young people are mixing those two up and are calling themselves and labeling themselves a therian because they like doing quads or they like wearing a cattail, when really that's not what makes you a therian. And you've heard me say this word a lot. So a theriotype is the inhuman animal that somebody behaves and acts like. You do not pick your theriotype. You don't even choose that you're a therian because it's something that happens involuntarily. And on quadrobics, this has become like really popular on TikTok and stuff like that. I even post the occasional quadrobics video. But know that you do not have to do quadrobics to be valid if you are a therian, whether that's because disability, like weight, not strong enough, or even just you don't want to do it. Like you do not have to do quadrobics to feel valid and to feel like you are a real therian. Another thing is a lot of therians, and fake therians, believe that they are therians because of a past life. Now, I personally believe that I had a past life as an animal, or as animals, because two stereotypes. But that doesn't define my therianthropy. What defines my therianthropy is the inhuman traits, behaviors, qualities, and urges, not that I had a past life. Even non-therians can have a past life as an animal. So if your only reason for being a therian is you had a past life, or you dream shift, which is having a dream where you are an animal, which happens to everybody, not just therians, it happens to everybody, then you probably aren't a therian. If those are your only reasonings for it, then you probably aren't a therian. Now, with those things out of the way, let's go into trying to find out if you are a therian and what your theriotypes are. Finding out your therian or even your theriotypes can be hard and sometimes even seem impossible. So while it can be tricky, this task can be done. When you start to question if you're a therian, you have to ask yourself, why? Why do you think you're a therian? Is it because you think it's cool, or do you have traits that don't seem human? When you're finding out these behaviors, it is important to also know what natural human behaviors are, so I'd suggest researching those too. This is one of the most important steps. Keeping track of these behaviors and qualities in a journal might also prove helpful to help keep your thoughts organized. I personally have one of my own. It needs to be updated because I don't journal a lot, but it includes like traits, behaviors, general ways to connect, stereotypes that I'm questioning, even just freeform stuff where I can just journal about things that I felt like related, and even some simple definitions. So, with that being said, being a therian isn't a choice, and it's not some game or some role play. It really is an identity. So, like, for an example, some inhuman traits that a deer therian might face is whenever they hear a small noise, they might pause and pick their head up, trying to, like, hear around more. If they exhibit more male deer traits, I'm using white-tailed deer for an example, they might feel the need to headbutt or fight for a person that they're interested in, similarly to how male deers will fight over a female, and even chase the female. Yep, even chase the female. Once you figured out why you think you're a therian, it does get easier. So the next steps is typically finding out your theriotype or your theriotypes. Some people only behave like one animal, where others can behave as many. As I said before, those are called polytherians. I myself am a polytherian. Other people never really find out if they're one certain animal. Instead, they feel like they act like the whole species. Then these are called clodotherians. So for an example, a clodotherian might be like a deer. I think they would use the scientific name for that. I don't have the scientific name of a deer on the top of my head, or the genus name. And so instead of just identifying as like one type of deer, like a fallow deer, they would identify as all of them, like a tuft deer, a crested deer, a water-crested deer, I think that's the name, white-tailed deer, red deer, roe deer, all of those types of deer, instead of just identifying as one. People feel like their stereotypes changes from day to day or week to week, even from hour to hour. And those are called polymorphs. So their stereotype is never constant. It changes. For an example, they might change between a crow to a cat to a tapir to a shark. Therians can be all animals, and they can be any gender. I know there's a lot of wolves and cats out there, and a lot of the therians that you see are females, but they can be any gender, they can be any animal that you could think of. Somebody could be a gnat, like those little flying gnats, and somebody else could be a starfish. And that is completely valid, and that does not make them less of a therian. Once you've narrowed it down to a certain species, if you even narrow it down to a certain species, that does get easier. Start researching them individually and cross-referencing their behaviors to your own. What sounds do they make? You might want to compare them to your own if you make involuntary vocals. Some might find that not a single type of animal acts the way that they do. Instead, the whole species might fit better. That's okay too. It takes a long time researching your stereotypes, and you might get it wrong the first time. I thought I was a wolf, but turns out I'm a domestic dog with not a single bit of wolf in me. Even once you think you've gotten it right, keep researching others and keep researching the one that you already have. New information might appear, or false information could be proved wrong. Never settle. Another thing is, when looking at photos of these animals, you could feel almost like you're looking in a mirror. Despite this, don't base your whole identity off of thinking you look like an animal on a non-physical level, because it really boils down to the inhuman traits. If you feel like you're looking at family or friends, and you identify with and not as these animals, and you don't have the inhuman traits, then you might be other-hearted instead. There are many different ways to figuring out your stereotypes, but not all of them are reliable. Meditation can help, but when meditating, you can morph your mind into thinking you're something you're not, so it's important to focus on these on those behaviors. When meditating, your mind changes to what you've been thinking. So if you've been thinking, I'm a tiger therian, I'm a tiger therian, I'm a tiger therian, when meditating, you're probably going to think you're a tiger therian, when in reality, you might be a raccoon dog. For all I know, that could be what you are. And just because you've told yourself that you're this one thing over and over and over and over and over again, but you just haven't really found the right thing. Journaling and keeping track of these things in an Alter Human journal, whether physical or on a notes app or Google Docs, can really help keep track of your thoughts. Now, here are some don'ts. Don't try and force a shift or really try and force anything. Therianthropy is not forced. It comes natural without even realizing. At least at first, you don't realize. If you do force these traits and behaviors, then you're probably not a therian. Also, don't listen to unreliable sites like TikTok, because a lot of the stuff on TikTok, there's a lot of misinformation, and it's really just doing quads and wearing gear. I myself am not on TikTok, so I cannot directly prove this, but yeah. Some therian creators, especially the young ones, are misinformed about therianthropy and are accidentally spreading misinformation. Some things that they might say or claim that aren't true is therianthropy is a choice. Only a past life makes you a therian. You have to have gear to make you valid. Or I've even had a couple comments on my thing like, I want to be a therian, but I don't have gear. You can't be a therian like that. It doesn't work like that. Now, none of those things are true, okay? Another thing is linking every little thing to therianthropy. Humans are naturally drawn to the outside, and some are like a people's persons, and others are antisocial and don't like being around people. Now you can relate that to your therianthropy, but they don't always have to relate. Something that I kind of relate to my therianthropy is I constantly look down, to the point where I run into multiple things. But that can also just be a normal human trait. Only basing your therianthropy on a past life or a connection to an animal isn't something that makes you a therian. A lot of them do have those two things, but those two things by themselves isn't a valid reason to being a therian. A few things to keep in mind is that a lot of therians are canines or felines, so there is a chance that you could be one yourself. However, therians can be any animals, not just cats and wolves. No one really understands why those are the common theriotypes, but some think it's because of a connection, but some think it's like a human connection to these animals for so long. But that brings up another question. Why aren't there more chickens, cows, or deer therians? Humans also know a lot about wolves, foxes, and cats, and may be able to more easily cross their behaviors to those animals rather than a mosquito or a starfish for example. Humans also know a lot about wolves, foxes, and cats, and may be able to more easily cross their behaviors to those animals rather than a mosquito or starfish, for example, just because there's more research on those animals. Other people who are neurodivergent, like having ADHD, autism, and DID, also might be more susceptible to being a therian because of their neurological disorder. DID alters that are non-human because of trauma could qualify as a therian for being physically a human but behaving like an animal, and on a non-physical level identifying as that animal. Humans are also naturally predatory animals, so they might connect more to other predators. This is why it's important to also look into human behaviors. Most people, whether it's in media or in person, have grown up around cats or dogs, so our child brains might have associated those animals as ourselves and subconsciously behaved like them. However, these are not directly proven. But these are questions for another day. And remember, no matter your beliefs behind your therianthropy and involuntary traits, it's all still valid. And with that, we have come to the end of our video. I hope that this video has helped at least some of you find out your identity. Remember, never stop researching. The more you know, the more you can help rebuild our community. I hope to make more videos like this as time goes on. Remember, be kind and stay wild.